Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Zoning, Zealots, and Ziplines by Tonya Kappes, narrated by Johanna Parker. Chapter 1. I knew today would be bad when it started off at the National Park Committee meeting. I was seated across the long conference table alongside 14 other committee members. We were staring at Judge Gab Hemmer, who was eating a donut. Or should I have said the donut appeared to be eating him? It was a maple long john, too. My favorite. At least, it was. I gulped, wondering what on earth Stella did at home after she'd cooked a big meal for him and he wore it on his face. The emerald engagement ring on my finger suddenly felt tighter, almost strangling my circulation. I fiddled with it and was happy to report the ring could twist and turn like my mental images of a much older Hank years down the road with a half-eaten s'more in one hand, chocolate dripping out one side of his mouth, and marshmallow out the other. "Do you agree, Mae?" Gab asked, bringing me out of my thoughts, or rather, my waking nightmare. "You have something—" I trailed off as I gestured to my own chin. "Oh, yeah," he said in a gruff voice. Then he grabbed the plastic wrap Christine Watson, owner of the Cookie Crumble, where I'd picked up the donuts for the early morning meeting, had used to fold up each individual donut, only because she knew I didn't like them to touch in the bag. The parchment paper crinkled and rustled when he swiped it across his chin as though it were a napkin. "Thank you." He nodded and got back down to business, just like he did in his judge's chambers. "Do you agree?" "Yes." I gave a solid answer, though I had no idea what I'd just agreed to. "That settles it. Lloyd, you get the Zipline Adventures assignment, and Mae will report back on the Stargazer." The sharp, loud, and crisp sound of Gab Hemmer's judge's gavel echoed through the conference room. Wait, Zipline? That was the one I wanted. I shuffled through the paperwork in front of me and found the printed copy of the online form I'd filled out and printed. See? Gab Hemmer looked over the top of his reading glasses at Veronica Chestnut, the committee secretary. Ahem. She cleared her throat and flipped over the top sheet of paper in the notebook to reread the minutes she'd just taken. Judge Hemmer said, "We have 2 members who want to attend the new zipline inspection, Mae West and Lloyd Hornbuckle." She glanced up to make sure we were all listening. "We don't have anyone who wants to do the Stargazer inspection. Mae, would you consider switching to the Stargazer inspection tonight?" I leaned in on the conference table and slightly turned my ear to hear exactly what he thought I'd said because I didn't recall this conversation ever happening. "Do you agree, Mae?" Judge Hemmer asked Mae. Veronica looked up with a slight grin on her face, as if preparing herself for what was coming next. Mae replied to the judge, "You have something." And then she pointed at her chin. "Veronica!" Judge Hemmer jerked around and looked behind him, where Veronica was sitting. "We don't need to hear all of that. Just get on with Mae agreeing." "Yes, sir." Veronica nodded and scanned down the piece of paper, which she flipped back. Judge Hemmer asked Mae, "Do you agree?" Mae said yes. But I didn't know what I was agreeing to. I was so preoccupied with the donut dancing on your chin as you talked that I didn't hear the motion on assignments. I wanted to blurt out that no one who lived here wanted to stargaze, so it made no sense that we had to even be there for the inspection. "The gavel has hit." Lloyd jumped to his feet. "I'm heading on down to Dieter's feeding seed before all the ziplining equipment gets bought up. It's gonna be a great activity." "Wait!" My response was crisp and to the point, almost on edge. "What? No!" I said, my voice cracking. "That settles it. Lloyd, you get the Zipline Adventures assignment, and Mae will report back on the Stargazers." He slammed the gavel one more time. "This brings the monthly National Park meeting to a close." The big, comfy conference room chair's wheels squealed as everyone but me pushed away from the table and got up. Each person took another donut from the bags and refilled their coffees, as though everything was fine and dandy. "Where are you going?" Judge Hemmer stopped me when he noticed I'd gathered my things and was heading out the door. "You brought the donuts and the coffee. Usually, when it's your turn, you hang around a bit." "Not today." I've got to finish getting all the items for the S'mores and Snores Happy Trails Campground monthly party that I put on for the community and my campground guests.
Now, Maybelline, I could ride that pouty lip of yours all the way to town.
He pointed at my face with the donut in his hand.
You should have been listening and not daydreaming.
If he only knew I was in the midst of a total nightmare when he asked me the question. I'm not pouting. I'm just doing my job. And stargazing is not part of it. I like adventure. I threw my chin toward Lloyd as I juggled all the files in my hands. He's got one foot in the grave, and the zipline is meant for someone in a little better shape. Judge Hemmer glared at me.
Why, Maybelline, I don't like hearing you talk like that. Are you sure you're not all stressed out over this wedding of yours?
His brow wrinkled. I sucked in a deep breath to give my head and my mouth some space. I didn't want to say anything I'd regret. I'd taken pride in being on the board and loved my life. One little stargazing night in the grand scheme of things wasn't going to hurt me. Or was it? Chapter 2. The National Park building was in the next town over from Normal, where I lived. It gave me some time to think in the car, or calm down, before I got back to Happy Trails Campground, the campground I owned and operated. On my walk back to the front of the National Park building, I let my mood shift by looking at all the big windows that wrapped around the building. The views of the forest and mountains were breathtaking. The dense green trees stretched as far as the eye could see, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks piercing the blue sky and casting shadows on the landscape below. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a warm glow. I stopped and closed my eyes, letting the sun shine on my face. It was a welcome respite from the internal dialogue I was having about what Hank might look like eating a donut when he was Gab's age. The view is truly a sight to behold, and it is no surprise that many people flock to this office just to enjoy the stunning views. Veronica had sidled up to me without me even hearing her. Lost again in your thoughts? You couldn't see it, but when Gab was talking about the zipline and the stargazing, he had this piece of donut dangling. I raised my finger to my chin and wiggled it to mock what I'd seen. It was disturbing. I couldn't peel my eyes away. Veronica was hysterically laughing. You are so fun. I'm so glad you're on the board. They're so stuffy in there. She put a hand on my arm. But from the report Claire Patton from the Stargazers filed, it sounds remarkable. She's got the best spot for it, too. A lot of people have been trying to get that property for years, including the university. I think you're trying to talk me into just going with it and not grumbling about it. I watched her smile like I'd caught her. All I'm saying is that I think you'll come away from the experience a little shocked. She shrugged. Tourists come a long way to see the night sky here in the Daniel Boone National Forest. There's no big city lights to skew any of the darkness, and the Stargazers have really got some great things planned. She placed her hand on the stack of files in her arms. Good for the economy, too. You know I can't argue about that. I gave a quiet snort in the back of my throat, since I'd been able to help the economy in Normal after bringing the campground back from less than stellar accommodations to the hottest place to stay in the forest. I can't wait to hear what you think. Veronica was about to say something else before a couple of the inspectors with the national park barreled their way between us.
Neil Lippman is awful, and I'm the one who has to approve the zipline.
They didn't appear to even notice they'd completely come between Veronica and me.
I'm telling you, Ace Price pulled the permit for him. Or her.
The other snorted. Veronica headed down the hall to her office, which was near the Daniel Boone National Park Museum. She was the director of activities there. A lot of people who worked in the forest held a couple of different jobs. Not that we had to, but we loved the forest so much, we would do anything to keep it. If that meant I had to stargaze for a night, then so be it. Several tourists were milling about in the front area of the building, where they seemed to be picking through the hundreds of brochures on the wire racks. I loved seeing the Happy Trails campground brochure at the very tip top. I'd had a professional photographer take the photos, and they were gorgeous. They stood out from the rest, but the dark blue one with the bright twinkling stars next to it caught my eyes. I walked over to the wire sleeves and plucked out a brochure, which I read as I started to walk out of the building and to the parking lot. Stargazers. I smiled. That they'd gone to the expense of creating a gorgeous brochure told me they did want to make theirs a true business that could stand the test of time. Plus, they had the brochure made before the inspector came to make sure it deserved any sort of funding they might have secured for the national park. Instead of leaving, I sat down on the reclaimed cedar bench and flipped through the trifold brochure. Experience the stars in the Daniel Boone National Forest like no others. This tour is a true treasure for those seeking astronomy and star-filled skies. The national park offers a rare opportunity to experience nearly perfect stargazing conditions. The International Sky Seekers Association considers the national park's sky gold tier, a title only earned by some of the darkest and most remote locations across the globe, with rarely a cloud in the night sky. Our 3 nights spent in the heart of the Daniel Boone National Forest are quite possibly the best stargazing you'll ever experience. That was quite an experience they were offering, I thought, and folded the brochure up. It would be one of the things I'd ask Claire Patton on my tour tonight. Speaking of tonight, there wasn't much time between now and the time I had to be at the Stargazer tour. I had to start preparing Happy Trails Campground for s'mores and snores. After all, if I was going to do my part to help my best friend, Bets Hager, make a few good deed items from the list her deceased husband left behind, I had to get a move on. Part of the proceeds from s'mores and snores would go to one of those charitable foundations on the good deed list. Every month, I hosted a county-wide get-together, which I thought of as a meet and greet of sorts. I encouraged all the campground guests to participate by cooking one dish over their campfire to share with the community. The term community referred to all the other guests staying in Happy Trails, as well as the entire town of Normal. I also allowed the vendors and shop owners of Normal to set up booths in the recreational building, mostly outside underneath the covered area, since the inside was full of entertainment for the guests. We had a large population of children, so I liked to keep that area available for the kiddos at all times. It was a fun night of community. Blue Ethel and the Adolescent Farm Boys, a local band, was scheduled to play some great toe-tapping bluegrass music while everyone walked around with a plate and sampled what the campground guests cooked over their fire pits, as well as delicious food from the Normal diner. I lived on the campground property in a small travel trailer I'd completely gutted and made a perfect place to share with Fifi, my sidekick poodle. My engagement to Hank Sharp, the local private investigator, had really got me thinking about where we were going to live once the fall arrived and we were hitched. Fifi, Hank, his dog, Chester, and I would be in tight quarters in my little camper. Hank lived a few camper lots down in a huge fifth wheel that would be plenty of space for us. I was a little hard-headed and had worked so hard to get where I was that I was still a little cautious when it came to letting people in. After all my trust in men went down the toilet after I was married to the most notorious Ponzi scheme criminal in the United States. Then someone got to him before I did. They murdered him. That was why I lived in a camper in a campground in the middle of Kentucky. Yes, it was an actual national forest, but when you broke it all down, it was literally in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky. The forest made it hard to differentiate between leaving one small town and entering another. It was easy for me to get wrapped up in my thoughts on my way back to Normal as I drove along the curvy, wooded roads. The Daniel Boone National Forest was a truly breathtaking place. The winding roads twisted and turned through dense forests of tall trees, their branches forming a canopy overhead. The last day's sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. A sense of peace and serenity washed over me as I took in the narrow and winding road, taking a couple of sharp turns before I had to really focus on the steep inclines so I wouldn't drive off the curve of the road. That was the thing about the forest. There were so many steep cliffs where making one wrong move could send you straight to your death. And stargazing at night would be one of those moves if you didn't have a really good guided tour. My mind came up with even more things to look for and ask Claire about, since I'd accepted my job as a committee member. If I had to do it, I might as well make it as good as possible. Civilization faded away as I got closer and closer to Normal. The early spring day had actually warmed into the 60s. There was something about the changes in seasons, especially spring. In the distance, I noticed something in the road. I brought my little Ford Focus to a crawl as I watched a couple of does cross the road, bringing a smile to my face. I rolled down the window and took in the sounds all around me as I watched the deer sprint over into the woods. The gentle rustling of leaves underneath their hooves crunched as they made their way. The Kentucky bluegrass was starting to pop up in patches, and soon whatever was left over from the winter would be buried in the lush landscape. My phone buzzed with a call, and I hit the button on the steering wheel to bring it up on the Bluetooth speakers. "Mae, where are you?" Ellis Sharp, now Ellis Randall, Ty's new wife. I had to clear my throat. Just the thought of her being Ty's wife stuck like a hard rock in my throat. "Ellis, what's up?" Hank's sister alone was a hard pill to swallow in doses, but now that she lived full-time in the campground with us, she was a thorn in my side. Dottie Swaggart, the manager on the Happy Trails property, said of Ellis,
"Every rose has a thorn."
That described Ellis perfectly. "Where are you?" she whined. On my way back from the National Park Committee meeting. I heard the birds chirping and singing, filling the air with their melodies, but I couldn't really enjoy it, so I rolled up the windows and hit the speed limit to get back to the campground. "I have a problem," she said in a hushed tone as if she were trying not to be heard. "Ty is getting ready for work. Yes, I gave him the order for the snores and s'mores." S'mores and snores. I had no idea what on earth had gotten into her because I never asked about Ty, but the one thing I would correct was the event's title. We eat the s'mores first, then we do the snores. Get it? Cute. She was talking in code or something. I guess I'm not understanding why you're calling me, so I'm going to hang up now. I wasn't going to be at my soon-to-be sister-in-law's beck and call every time she needed something. She never gave me the time of day before she was married to Ty. Hank's parents had sort of cut her off when she up and got married to Ty Randall after a few weeks of dating. It wasn't that they dated for only a few weeks that put her mama in a tizzy, a downright hissy fit. It was that their mama had spent all of her life providing everything for Ellis to become some big model. I mean, every decision the family made, every penny went to Ellis, leaving Hank to be raised by his Granny Agnes. I was so thankful he was raised by her. But Ellis had always been spoiled and rotten to the core. If I put her in the middle of tonight's Stargazer event, she'd honestly think the stars and the moon were out for her and would start revolving around her head. And to see her living in a camper with Ty and his siblings beside his ill father was pretty entertaining. "Tell Mae hello," I heard Ty call out from Ellis's end of the phone. "Okay, dear. I love you." I heard kissing, too. "Yuck," I groaned and took the right path of the fork in the road, which led me straight back to the campground. "You could have waited until I got back." "You don't understand. I think I've messed up the plumbing." Her voice cracked and trembled as she tried to speak through what sounded like tears. Sounded like. Ellis was great at acting. The modeling gig and beauty pageants didn't work out so well for her, but the acting was spot on. She probably should have pursued being an actor. Too late now. "I don't know what to do. I've tried so hard to live in a camper. I don't know how you do it. I feel so alone." This was the part during which she wanted sympathy from me. "Oh, Ellis, you're not alone. We love having you in the campground. Don't worry about it. Whatever it is can be fixed," was what she wanted to hear from me. Over the past few months, I gave her that safety and comfort, but she hit my limit when she called me in the middle of the night asking if we could put out have-a-heart traps for raccoons so they didn't come into her garbage at night. In the middle of the night, and we lived in the middle of a forest. Things she should really know, since she did, in fact, grow up here. Again, she was shielded from the everyday life by her parents. I did give her credit. Somehow, she kept Ty from realizing she didn't know a thing about camping and stole his heart right out from underneath him. "What do you mean, you think you broke the plumbing?" Curiosity tickled my brain. "Ty had told me how I had to use septic-safe camper toilet paper, but it's all scratchy and stuff." I could already see where this was going. So I kept a little bit of soft cloud toilet paper for me hidden, and when I tried to flush just now, it all puffed up, and other things bubbled up in the toilet. Stop trying to flush it. Immediately, I could picture what might happen if she continued to try to make it go down. I started to giggle at the images of her standing over the RV's already tiny toilets. Are you laughing at me? Her ability to shift her tone was remarkable. You said you'd help me get used to full-time RVing. I never said I would help you, Ellis, I reminded her. You expect me to. You two only rent one of the full-time spots I allow to be rented on a yearly basis. So it's up to your husband to show you how to live in his $100,000 RV. 100,000? She gasped. I don't know if you realize the RV you are living in is well into the middle $100,000 range. Most people didn't realize how expensive RVs were until they decided to purchase one. From what you told me at the beginning of this conversation, he told you to use RV toilet paper. You choose not to use it on your precious hiney. It's like using a fingernail file. She made me snort another laugh. I see you think this is funny. I'll just call my brother. The phone went silent. Ellis? I waited a couple of seconds. Ellis? The radio popped back over the speakers of my car, letting me know she'd hung up on me. I should have known right then and there that my day would only get a lot worse. Chapter 3. After Alice hung up on me, I might have sped up a little. Not because she threatened to call Hank, that was fine and dandy, but I had to see Ellis trying to clean out the hose from Ty Randall's big RV that housed the family. That hose went to the underground septic point of entry we provided for all the camper sites. Happy Trails Campground really wasn't a year-round live-in campground. We served the purpose of campers who were tourists to the Daniel Boone National Park. When I became the owner of the campground and moved to Normal, citizens were already living there. Those people included Dottie Swaggart, the campground manager, as well as Ty Randall's father and siblings. The campground also became my home when I parked my little camper on site, and Hank moved his fifth wheel there after he'd moved off his parents' property. Currently, there were 4 full-time residents, and the rest were tourists. Some tourists would stay up to a couple of weeks at a time, since there was so much to explore in and around the park. But mainly, the guests stayed for 1 week only. That we offered full water hookup, sewage, internet, and electricity was rare for one campground. We received so much interest in the campground that we had to make it reservation only, which kept our wait list very long. I'd gotten so lost in my thoughts and tickled about Ellis's damage to Ty's RV that the drive back home seemed shorter than it was. Before long, I was driving under the original wooden arch sign that read Happy Trails Campground and taking the long gravel drive up to the actual campground. The 5-mile-an-hour speed limit made it easy for me to glance to the right, look at the office, the first outbuilding, and see the lights were on inside. The chair next to the office door wasn't occupied by Dottie, so I knew she was inside working. Dottie Swaggart was a great employee. She would work day and night if I asked her to. But as an on-site owner, I made sure I was available any time. That made it easy for Dottie and me to not only rotate out as we needed to, but also take morning and afternoon shifts in the office so the days weren't too long. Of course, those long days consisted mainly of walking around the campground and making sure all the guests had what they needed. I rolled down the window and let the fresh air that came with the warmer weather whip in. A couple of deep breaths were so good, not only for my lungs, but for clearing my head of any pre-notions of what Ellis had done. It filled my heart to see campers sitting outside their campers with big smiles on their faces, talking with their neighbors. Henry had gotten out the pedal boats, and a few guests were enjoying the activity on the lake. I took the road to the left around the campground so I could check on everyone before I took on the task of trying to get Ellis's sewage line cleaned out, or attend to whatever was happening with it. The recreation center was filled with children, not only playing video games, but standing by the vending machines to see what tickled their fancy for a snack. Earlier, we'd taken down the tiki hut decorations for the brutal and cold, snowy winter season that just left us. Henry had already put them all back. The sounds of birds singing and chirping and leaves rustling in the breeze created a lively and vibrant atmosphere that one expected to hear when they came to Happy Trails. Even the stationary campers, which I'd kept on site purely for rental, had been rented, as had the fun bungalow-style cabins. These were perfect for the people who wanted to either try out camping or just loved nature, but had not taken the leap or had the desire to own their own campers. Happy Trails Campground offered everything, even the flat piece of land off a little from the bungalows, where many people did good old-fashioned tent camping. A long sigh of relief escaped me as a feeling of satisfaction curled inside of me. All was right with the world. In Happy Trails Campground, anyway. "Mae!" Ellis waved her arms above her head to flag me down and ran into the middle of the gravel road. "Stop!" she wailed as if I was going to hit her. "I see you." I waved a finger toward the concrete parking slab to let her know I was going there. She ran alongside my car, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. The beauty queen had appeared to take a fall from grace, or at least a few stumbles. Her long hair was stuck to her face in strands, almost like it was glued or something. When she tried to shove her hair behind her shoulders, her manicured nails, which she'd paid a Sally Ann Dean to work on at Cuticles, were chipped and broken. "Ty can't know I use the regular toilet paper." The sparkle had left her eyes, leaving them dull. "Can you please help me?" "Yes, I can." I really wanted to make some sort of smart-aleck comment, but with the shape she appeared to be in, I wasn't sure she could take it like she normally did. "Let's see what's going on. I'm sure it's fine." I wasn't really that confident, but as the owner of the campground, I had to put the tumultuous history between Ellis and me behind me and treat her like I would any other guest. She'd already gone into the camper before I could get out of the car. Once inside the RV, where I'd been several times before she moved in, I marveled at the changes. "Ellis!" I gasped. "This place looks great." Long gone was the couch where Ty lived and helped raise his brothers, the one with the stains and rips. The toys were picked up, and knickknacks were sitting around. "Don't you love those?" Ellis pointed out the framed prints. "Those were done by a local artist. Amazing." She stood there for a moment as if the time had faded away and stared at the photos. "That is some talent. I love the seasons." I'd realized the 4 prints represented the 4 seasons we had here in the area. "That's one thing I really do love about living here." "Living here?" She twisted around and frowned. "I need help. I've got the kitchen covered and have been cooking some basic things, but the toilet is killing me. I can't use that scratchy paper." "There is a soft tissue made for campers. I have a few rolls at my place I can drop off. You and Ty can order them or go on down to see Alvin Dieters because he keeps it stocked for the tourists," I told her. "I'm not sure why Ty would have this, then." Her lips pursed, and her eyes darted, as if she were trying to figure it out at the moment. There was only one explanation. I said, "Men, boys, money." "Huh?" Her brows furrowed. "I'm sure before Ty's mama passed, she used softer tissue, but guys pick the cheapest stuff." It came as no surprise to me, since I'd been out in the world and on my own for a while, but Ellis hadn't. She'd been sheltered all her life, and her parents gave her the finest things. "Is that what Hank does?" She tried to lump her brother into that category. "Agnes taught him well," I assured her. "We better get a look at the toilet before the kids get home from school." "Right this way." She led me down the hall, where they had a much larger bathroom than most. When Ty had moved back from Los Angeles, where he was a big-time fancy chef after his father had a heart attack, he knew he would have to stay, help raise his brothers, and run the Normal Diner, their family-owned business in downtown Normal. He made a lot of changes then, and getting a huge RV with the big family bathroom option was a must for him. "What's on your face?" I asked, almost fearing it had something to do with her trying to fix the bathroom issue. "Maple syrup." She glanced into the bathroom mirror and started to peel the strands of hair stuck to her cheeks off her face. "That's how long I've been working on this toilet." We both stood over the demon piece of plastic and looked down into the dry bowl. "I got the kids off to school after I made them pancakes and came into the bathroom so I could get my shower before I started my day. And here we are, hours later." The frustration rolled off her. "Okay, push the pedal." I knew she didn't have long until the boys would come home, and the race to get them a snack, take them to any sports practices, and bring them back for supper would ensue. When she pushed on the pedal attached to the commode, the small hole in the bottom opened. Inside the tube, I could see globes of white, fluffy, cotton-like toilet paper all swelled up. Luckily,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?